And, I think part of the tragedy of with Hillary Clinton is what happened was Trump named people's pain. Obama named, no, not Obama, Bernie named people's pain. Hillary did not name the pain. I'm not saying she didn't care about the pain, and I'm not saying that she wouldn't have done everything in her power to assuage the pain. But her campaign, when she was out there saying, oh, we just need to continue the success of the Obama years, I knew in my heart right then, because I travel this country, that's what I've done for 35 years, I knew how many millions of people were out there thinking, continue the success? I'm freaking dying here.
Right. Well, but that's also an argument, obviously that pain's out there. It is very easy for a demagogue like Trump to channel that pain into anger, into division, into fear, into hatred.
Right.
How do you turn that around
Well,
while still recognizing it? Because some people, who are feeling that pain, who are feeling an economic dislocation that you mentioned, will say, hope and change, that sounds nice. We've heard it too. Hope and change, that sounds great. That's easy for them to say. These are well-off, wealthy political leaders telling us this. What are you going to do for me?
Well, first of all, Democrats have to take responsibility for the fact that there is some legitimacy in that point. When you allow people to get to the point, I mean, there is absolutely no reason that things got as bad as they were. Democrats were in charge a lot of that time.
Right.
Democrats were in charge a lot of the time that the trajectory was unfolding of the largest massing inequality since 1929. Democrats were in charge some of that time. Democrats were in charge some of the time when we were moving towards a place where 1% of all Americans was owning more wealth than the bottom 90%. Democrats were in charge a lot of that time, including in charge of the economy during that time when we were leading to a place where 40% of all Americans are struggling on a daily basis just to make basic costs. So for those of us, or for those Americans who do not have a historical memory, such as I do, of a time when the Democrats stood for the people no matter what, even if it was against overreach by capitalist forces. So that we look at the times when the Democrats too often cozy up to those corporate forces and we say, yeah, but their heart's in the right place. And too many Americans haven't seen that, or don't recognize that, or certainly haven't seen that in their lives. In my opinion, while we have a Republican Party that's been bought hook, line, and sinker into the idea of a corporatist agenda,
Right.
my sense, well, two things, going back to words also. Republicans don't walk their talk, but Democrats too often don't talk their walk. Now, with Democratic policies, in my opinion, the vast majority of the time, their policies seek to assuage the pain that is produced by unjust economic policies.
Right.
But it's too often just pain on the periphery, because too often Democrats are unwilling to address the underlying forces and to challenge the underlying forces that make all that pain inevitable.
What policies would you pursue as president to challenge those underlying forces?
Well, the first thing we need to do is to recognize that the undue influence of money on our politics is the cancer underlying all these other cancers.
Right.
One of the very sad things, of course, about the fact that Hillary did not win is that we don't have a chance anytime soon of appointing a Supreme Court justice that might give us a path towards overturning Citizens United.
Right.
So we have two things here. One, we have the possibility of a constitutional amendment and the possibility of legislation. This is why I think it's as important that the Democrats win the Senate as is important that the Democrats win the White House in 2020. That would be the magic possibility here. If that's the case, first thing I would do is submit to Congress legislation to establish public funding for federal campaigns. The issue, it's not big enough, in my opinion, for the Democrats to say we want universal health care. Democrats also need to be making very clear and standing on the realization, not just in what we know, but in what we are willing to say, that the reason we don't have universal health care right now is because it would cut into short-term profits for health insurance companies and big pharma. We need to be willing to name it and to say it and to challenge it, that the reason we're not addressing the climate crisis adequately is because of the obstruction from and the fact that it would cut into short-term profits for fossil fuel companies. And the Democratic Party should name and challenge the fact that we do not have a national security agenda based on creating peace in the world anytime in the next few decades, because to really do that would cut into short-term profits for defense contractors and the nuclear industry. And that is exactly what I mean by challenging, by naming it, by bringing the American people into that realization rather than exploiting how often the American people, our brains are scrambled and they don't really get what's going on here. The Democrats should not only stand for doing the right thing, but in order to do that, there has to stop being the moral equivocation on the part of too many Democrats by which the Democratic Party has itself been willing to pander, cozy up to, and play footsies under the table with those same corporate forces because they too take the money.
Do you see the support in Congress, even among Democrats and the public, for publicly funded elections? Since
that's my point to you. That's exactly my point.
You think you can pass that?
There are two kinds of Democrats, aren't there? And that's being played out in this campaign. There are two categories here. There's the
what are the two categories?
The two categories is the incrementalists who say we can have it both ways. We can take their money. We can take tens of thousands from some security investment firms. We can take tens of thousands from Big Pharma. We can take tens or even more thousands from oil companies. But we're going to go and be an instrument of change. Yeah, right. There's that. And they're saying, well, we'll make these incremental changes. And then there are those of us who say, this has got to stop. We need a fundamental pattern disruption of the American political and economic status quo.